So, welcome to HIPcast today. This is our year in review episode. Seth, can you believe we've been doing this for a year?
A little over a year by the time this comes out. That's kind of crazy to think about.
It is so crazy. It has been, first of all, let me just say, it has been so fun.
It has been fun.
It has been fun. I love doing stuff with you because we're always just crazy and off the cuff and we just roll with it and it's super fun. But also it's been fun to meet our professionals from across the country.
Yeah, that's been the key that has been surprising. Like, we weren't really sure where this would go, and we're not focused on like the growth numbers, and we're not going to be the 1 million subscriber podcast in the world. It was more of just look, we should really highlight the people within our profession. There are some really fantastic people in the profession. It's kind of where this whole thing came from, and that's the truth. Wow, we've talked to some incredible people that I don't know that I would ever had the opportunity to listen to their story prior to just this format. And to me, it's been very rewarding, and we laugh because, as a reminder to the audience that, you and I don't receive any financial benefit from this. Anything that comes from sponsorships or whatnot, that all goes to the THIMA Foundation for education and advocacy for the profession. So I know you and I have laughed about this just in other conversations, that regardless of that, like, I would want to continue this. Like, maybe it's like, even if we weren't posting this publicly, it'd be one of those things that I'd just be like, all right, let's randomly have 30-minute video chats with people across the country, because there's some fascinating people in our profession.
There are, and we had the opportunity to interview some of those and have conversations with some of those folks across the country in this past year. So today we're going to talk about this year in review. We're going to talk about some of our guests, some of the highlights, some of the things that stood out to us. And we'll talk a little bit about what to expect for next year I can't believe we're saying that. It's interesting, Seth. I'm sorry. Let me apologize to you publicly. I didn't get you anything for our 1 year anniversary.
Well, I mean, that's pretty standard. I understand you've not gotten me a birthday present either, but we'll just leave that alone. But it has been interesting to be all of a sudden a podcaster, which, the thing is, there's so many podcasts out there. And so we're very appreciative of those that actually listen to this and just listen to this crazy accent. But it has been there's been a learning curve, I would say. And, Shannan, I'd throw that question to you of, the first year of podcasting done, what have you learned about just podcasting in this format in general?
Well, there's some technical issues sometimes. That's my first lesson. I think about our conversation with Daniel Utek that we had the first time that didn't get published because of blocking for, technical issues. So we got to record him a second time in his Christmas sweater. That's when we were recording, was that time of year. So technical issues number one. Podcasting from the perspective of scheduling with busy professionals is sometimes a challenge. I've learned that. But what I think has been fascinating to me is the topics have been relatively easy in terms of, we have a health information professionals, at least for our podcast, health information professionals touch so many things, and there's new technology and new policy constantly. So I think I've learned that when we were maybe initially thinking, what are we going to talk about that's interesting? That was an unfounded concern. We have talked about so much. What about you?
Well, I think you're right on that, because we initially had thought it was very scripted in the topics. Like, we wanted to do here's a 30, 4 or 5 minute news section. What's new in this and what's going on in this? And then once we got into it, we realized a simple question to a professional of, how did you get into this mess? And then what do you do in this mess has turned out to provide incredible conversations to where, we shoot for 30 to 40 minutes in these conversations to try to, be beneficial to the audience, but also not an incredible amount of time. Think about people having a 30-minute commute or whatnot to work that could pop the podcast on and listen to what's going on. So you're spot on with the fact that the topic creation has really not been an issue. It's been scheduling people. And the fun thing is the more that we've kind of gotten out there and people are starting to listen, there's people that reach out and say, hey, I've never podcasted before. Can I be a guest? It's like, yeah, come on. Like that's a fun part. I guess that I'm curious about your experiences this summer and I guess through the spring, because you went on some speaking circuits through some of the state association meetings and people like stopped you to talk about this, right?
Yes. Yes, they did. And it was great because the recognition of that we're highlighting health information professionals. Folks have said, oh, we love listening, and so I'm so excited that folks love listening. It's not only so one of the things that I will say about our previous guests, when folks that have said, I've never podcasted before, they come on and they're nervous. Well, you can be comfortable with Seth and I because we are, as Seth likes to say, we're just a couple of East Tennessee hillbillies, right?
Yeah.
So we make it's just a conversation. And Seth and I are both making friends everywhere we go. And we're talking very welcoming. So don't be afraid, right? If you have an interest in coming on and you have something important to talk about, then you should be at ease because we prepare you. We give you some preparation and it's pretty easy. But yeah, it's been great to be not recognized as the HIPcast podcasters, but as the person or the people bringing the topics and highlighting our profession. That has been the most rewarding thing, is the fact that people recognize we are highlighting our profession. That's been fantastic. But I want to ask you, Seth, kind of, I've got some ideas on what stood out to me. What topics this year stood out to you? What'd you like?
That's an impossible question because we're nearly 30 episodes in right at this point, and there's been so many things. And if you go back to the beginning of episode 1 with Wanda and Claire Dixon Lee, I mean, just a perfect way to start this journey was to talk about where did this profession come from and what is the history of this profession? And, I went through HIM school back when HIM school was in person, and you went and sat and did all the terminal digit filing and all that stuff. And, I went, there was a little bit of education in the history of the profession at that point, but that podcast with Wanda and Claire was really eye-opening in my opinion, just to, as maybe a refresh of kind of where we've come from. And I think you've mentioned it recently that we're heading towards, as a HEMA, the century mark, right? And THIMA at our annual meeting this year will be year 75. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of history here to be heading towards the century mark as a profession. And then just our state associations also quickly heading towards that direction. There's a lot of history. But so for me, it's kind of hard to pinpoint a specific guest or a handful of guests, because I could probably pick a favorite out of each one of them. But the kind of thing that surprised me that we didn't plan on when we first started talking about this, and I know it's a problem when Shannan calls me or if I call her out of the blue, because it's like one of us have an idea, and that's how this whole thing popped up, was kind of random idea, right? But the thing that we didn't plan for were the bonus episodes, right? And that's something that has been kind of fun to watch evolve. And the first one was when we got to introduce Dr. Clower to the membership through a short form interview type process. And we weren't quite sure when we first did that, is this an episode? Do we do this as a bonus? Like, how do we release this? And that episode was a lot of fun, and it kind of blew up compared to our first. I think we had like maybe 5 episodes out, 4 or 5 episodes. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we did this bonus episode, and bam, it's like, wow, 400 or 500 people watched that podcast, which is like, are we onto something? Like, are we doing something good? Yeah. I hope Dr. Clower still listens to our podcast. Surely he does. I mean, he's got to learn a little bit about our profession and the crazy members that we have that are just wildly intelligent. But then you dive deeper into the bonus episodes with like, both of you and I have been very big proponents of advocacy of the profession.
Yes.
And Lauren Ripplinger on the staff of AHIMA does a fantastic job in DC keeping everything going in that crazy world that is DC. And yeah, we just reached out and said, hey, would you want to do a talk about what our members were up in DC advocating for? And that was a fun episode, which it's always great to talk to Lauren, but it was, to me, it was that engagement to the general member. That's, there's a small percentage of memberships of the membership that actually volunteers, whether it's in the state or the national level. So there's a very large percentage of that membership population that probably doesn't have the insight into all the little things that are occurring within the folks that are volunteering, like going to the summit, going to the House of Delegates. So kind of doing those bonus episodes to help communicate to the general membership the importance of, one, volunteering, but not everybody can volunteer. So having this platform to be able to share that content with them, to me, has been pretty phenomenal. It's been very, very interesting. I'll mention on the House of Delegates, I'd heard from several component associations that had done town halls with their delegates within their states, but they were not really well attended. And it's hard to do that because people are busy. I mean, it's impossible to schedule you and me and a guest sometimes. Imagine trying to schedule for the entire state of Tennessee with 1,500 members and being like, it's impossible, right? But with this format, people can listen to it when they have time in their commute, while they're on the treadmill or out taking a walk in the park. They can pop it on and be like, all right, here's what's going on in the profession. So I would say that it's been a critical aspect to see those bonus episodes utilized as an engagement tool for the general membership, and even us as a component association to be able to send that out to our membership to say, hey, here's what the House of Delegates is going to be working on. You've elected these delegates. If you have questions, here's how to contact them. To where before it was kind of hard to do.
It was really hard to do. eBlast, right? We're all blown up with eBlast from every subscription to anything we've ever, signed up for, signing up to win a new car, whatever. And we get a lot of communications from our profession, from both our state level as well as our national level, and sometimes even the local level. We get a lot of information because we're everywhere in healthcare, right? Health information lives in all of healthcare. So we get a lot of information. And so reading those emails sometimes is a challenge, where listening is a lot easier. But, that as you were talking through that, I was wondering, do we make it clear I don't know that we make it clear on these episodes that we're on Spotify and YouTube and Apple. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much anywhere you can get your audio podcast. I think it goes to all the major ones, Spotify and Apple Podcasts being the majors for audio, and then we do post the video version on YouTube. And it's I really did not think that YouTube would be the primary place that people listen or watch. But looking at the metrics, I mean, that's where the majority of the audience goes to is that aspect. But there are several that listen as well, and it's been interesting to learn how that whole analysis works on the back end, because it's like I can see number of downloads per episode, but I can't really see number of listens per episode when it comes to the audio versions. But I don't mind sharing the metrics. Like we've crossed 100 subscribers on YouTube that literally on YouTube or have a login and hit subscribe and get notified when we post an episode, which is kind of cool. And we're right at 700 followers on LinkedIn. That's awesome. Fascinating. Like, that's
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I didn't know, how, like you were talking about listening while you're walking or, whatever it is. And I typically, I love watching YouTube. Like I have several podcasts that I or video kind of things. They're mostly podcasts that I watch on YouTube. But if I'm cleaning the house or if I'm walking or whatever, it's easier for me to do it on Spotify or on, not, I don't do Apple because I'm a classic girl and I have
You're one of those
Samsung.
people.
I
Yeah.
have an Android. But I do it on Spotify because I can listen to I can listen to several of them, and I know it sounds crazy. Maybe it doesn't sound crazy, but it's maybe I think I'm a little bit crazy. But I go back and listen when we publish because we've recorded it, sometimes a couple of months in advance, and so when we post that and put it out there, I almost always go back and listen, and I'm always reminded how fascinating some of our guests have been. And I'm just like, wow, these are health information. Most of them have been health information professionals. I'm just blown away, Seth.
Yeah, I'm the same. Do you have any highlights on guests?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I have a million, right? But I can't share them all. But I will say, I found Marcus Hubbard, who I think was one of your mentees. He was so inspiring. He was inspiring to younger professionals, new professionals, students, and as well as some of the professionals that have been in the industry for a long time, but they want to move on to, they want a new segment, right? They want to learn some new skills or move into the tech space. Also, Sharon Easterling, her skills with artificial intelligence and her knowledge of that space. I mean, and I just think she's just a fascinating go-getter kind of woman. And I really enjoy all my time with her. Barbara Fuller in genomics. Remember Gina, the genomic legislation? She's a health information professional, y'all. And she was instrumental in protections around genomic studies. From a health information perspective, that is a monstrosity of an accomplishment.
And we got to talk to her.
Of us, and she talked to us. It's like she came down and talked to us. I mean, it was amazing. And I'll also say Melissa Kohler in autonomous coding, and I mentioned Melissa and Sharon specifically because they are skilled, tenured health information professionals who are taking that step. Not that they have been, they're almost running, but they have always been progressive thinkers and leaders, but they're in the spaces of AI, in the deeper tech than a lot of our professionals are, and they're leading. And some of the things that Melissa has done in her own organization with autonomous coding, the numbers have been staggering. So I think going back to those, and I will say maybe the most mentioned person, the most repeated name on our podcast is Lauren Ripplinger. So she gets the award for the most mentioned.
We talked about her today.
All the time. She's fantastic. She keeps us so, it is just good to get to have the communication with Lauren. And I did appreciate Kevin coming on. Coming on, his willingness to just hit the couple of challenging issues that we were facing as a profession and things that were causing tension. We were not going to ask him those questions. We prepped him. He knew what we were going to ask him. He brought those up. Much respect for him just hitting that head on.
Absolutely.
And I appreciated that. But Lauren, definitely the most mentioned person. And we are very fortunate as AHIMA members to have somebody like Lauren leading the policy ship up there. She's and her team, they are phenomenal. They really are. So those are kind of my highlights on my guests, I think. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the other things besides guests that we brought to light or that we conversed about,
about the profession in general, right?
About the profession in general. So we had some considerations. We had the 40%, well, I'll call it a debacle because it was definitely a debacle. And I think AHIMA will even say now that that was kind of a debacle, including the board. I've heard some very transparent conversation from some of the board members about how things come through in the packet for getting approved, and they're just like approving in block. And I think that's kind of maybe how this 40% thing happened. But that was a topic that we covered that was really important to us. We did welcome Kevin as the new CEO, which I think was huge because, we had a previous CEO, then we had an interim CEO, and then, then we got a new CEO. Another point of that is, the board hired another CEO that does not have a HEMA credentials. They're not an HIM credentialed person. Although I will say, Seth, that I think that this choice is not a terrible choice. So far, Kevin is, not that I agree with everything that Dr. Clower is doing or how things are unfolding. Nobody's going to agree 100%, but I do fully think and believe that he is moving us in a positive direction. Let's talk about that a little. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, it was a fun conversation when we had it in the beginning. Maybe we need to reach out because he's got to be coming up on a year, right? We need to have
January, late January, or maybe early February, something like that.
Maybe we reach out to him again and say, all right, do you want to come back on and say you're a year in and now you've been thrown into the fire with these crazy HI professionals, and we are a very demanding group.
We are.
That is the truth of the matter. Is HI professionals are very demanding, and he's come into an organization that had struggles, had some issues, and he's been able to lead through that, I believe. 100% with you that you're never going to have somebody that you agree with 100%, and that's healthy. That's okay.
Absolutely.
But I would give him, as we head towards that year mark with him, a very, B plus, A minus grade. I don't know. Maybe that's even a little harsh because he's had to deal with a group of professionals that's, struggled over the past few years with leadership, and there's been a lack of trust. There's been a lack of progress. There's been a reduction in our membership, and there's a lot of frustration. And he came into that, and that's a tough environment for anybody to walk into. And I feel like he's done a very good job trying to navigate that and to manage that. So I'm very happy with that hire. I think all of us initially were like, really, dadgummit, a doctor? We're supposed to suspend doctors. We're not supposed to hire them. But very happy with kind of the general direction of things that Dr. Clower's been able to move along the profession and the association. So some of that comes to...
Yeah, well, some of those leadership challenges, Seth, that's a good point because, man, he did come into a pit of burning whatever.
Yeah, there's a term that I like to use in East Tennessee that I can't use on here because it's a something show, and the first word starts with an S as well. That's kind of where we were, but I don't think I can use that term.
We can't. We want to keep getting sponsors, so we definitely can't. But a lot of the challenges Kevin has faced, Dr. Clower has faced, there have been, anytime a new leader comes on, there's going to be a restructuring, reorganization. So there's been a ton of leadership and staff changes at AHIMA, mostly, if not all. I would say more than 90% of that driven by Kevin, right? Mm-hmm. So some of the leaders are gone. He's made a couple of key hires of credentialed health information professionals. I'm thinking of Jennifer Muller and Dr. Jasmine Agnew.
Yeah, Dr. Agnew.
Massive hires for, moving us in a positive direction. They understand the profession. They're credentialed. They're tenured staff, He also came into a never-ending implementation of a new membership software that we now have in place. Now, I know I have access to. I think I have access to everything, and it's working. And it's really nice. The user interface is really pretty. I know some people still don't have access. I think, Seth, you're one of those folks that don't have access yet.
Still can't get into it. Yeah. And then, from a state professional or a state association perspective, there's been issues with the membership rosters. But I will, the staff there, Nikki Shanks, has been fantastic in dealing with, again, the group of crazy that is the HI professionals.
Yes. Nikki is really committed. And, Nikki and I'll say, I don't mind saying, Nikki and I got off a little bit. You and I met Nikki together at the THIMA annual meeting. in March. And I can't believe that's been less than a year ago, because I feel like she's so much a part of our membership now that she feels like she's been here for a long time. So, but Nikki and I, during that meeting, we met, it was great. Then we had a little bit of a rocky continuation, but I appreciate her. I'm glad you brought her name up, because I appreciate how she has handled my crazy and my passion, and we connect. Nikki and I connect. She does care about serving the component association in her role, and she's been a phenomenal ad. I think she was probably higher. I can't remember. I don't know if she came after Kevin or before. I'm not exactly sure when she
came.
Probably
around the same time, right?
Maybe about the same time. But she's been a phenomenal ad. So I think there have been a lot of good things. Another thing that is important for us to mention, the 40%, we'll talk a little bit about that again, but the point of talking about it now is to say, in the end, what really kind of shook out of all that discussion was the education that is being provided at Component Association is high quality education. And it does qualify as part of that 40% education requirement from AHIMA. So we do count in there. And that's important, because each state represents the membership of their state to the national level and at the national level in every capacity. So having that recognition as component associations that we are in fact providing that quality education, that says a lot. And even if the decision to, kind of fall back away from the 40% requirement coming directly from AHIMA was under duress by AHIMA, like the membership was just really aggressive and passionate about that. Even if it was done under duress, AHIMA does now recognize that there are quality educational opportunities at the state level. So I appreciate that back and forth. And I'll say before I move into, well, actually it kind of relates, I guess, a little, but one of the things that I appreciate about Kevin's leadership currently are the town halls for membership. Now, these are general town halls for all the membership you can get on. I think there were over 700. Maybe my numbers are low. Even maybe there were over 1,000 folks listening to the very first one. But they're doing those every quarter, and I think that's going to go. Already is going a long way in building open communication and trust. And if you've ever been on those, listened to a call where Kevin is talking, he will say his cell phone number out loud, and he really does answer his cell phone. Or he might not answer, but he'll get back with you. He's doing a lot, and the town halls are a good place. The AHIMA town halls for just general membership, a good way to build trust and communication. So he's got a heavy task, and he's done a lot in a year.
The town halls have been really good. Yeah, they've been really good, and they've also done those for the House of Delegates, for the delegates to get in there and learn about what's going on and have some dialogue before getting into the House where you actually vote. They do them for the Component Association central office staff members, to where we can hear what's going on with the different requirements that the states have to have. So the communication level with the town halls between members and delegates and central office, all those type things have been, remarkably improved compared to what it's been since I've been volunteering. This goes back 20 years that I feel like there's been so much progress made in the past year in trying to open up the communication channels to lessen the distrust that has developed over many years. And I think that it's all heading in a positive direction. There's work to be done. Not everything is perfect. Well, there's some things that we still are mad about, and we're going to be mad about. But
forever and ever, amen.
That's because what we do. That's what we do. We're going to take everything that you've done good, and we're going to go, that was great. Now we're mad about this now. So
Passionate members, passionate members. Well, I think that's a good wrap on the year. I think we've had it's been a fun year with you, Seth. It's been a fascinating year with our guests, health information professionals, and not a few that I'll mention that are non-health information professionals. Honorable mentions here: Dr. Jason T., Joe Estevan, and Mitchell Josephson. Not health information professionals, not health information trained, but fascinating guests and doing good work. Part of our collaborators, right? Some of that interdependencies that we have with health information professionals and the rest of the industry. They were fascinating guests. But I do want to ask you, what do you think about the future of HIPcast? What does the next year look like? Do you still want to do, Seth, do you check yes or no? Do you still want to do podcasts with me?
Yeah. Who was that? Was that George Strait? Check yes or no? That's a good song. Not a sponsor yet, but we'll get George Strait on, which, I mean, it's amazing. He's still selling out arenas.
I mean, because he's still amazing.
He's still great. So, yeah. Do I want to continue this? Yes, absolutely. And it has been a lot of fun. And as I've researched and learned more about the podcast world, they say that if you can make it to year 2, or make it past year 2, then you've got a chance of survival, which is pretty fascinating to me, because I'm like, that it's hard. This has been harder than I thought it would be, scheduling wise and all those type of things. In some aspects, it's been easier than I thought it would be. Yeah. Regardless, it has been a lot of fun, as we've mentioned so far. So, to me, I think it's a continuation of what we've developed over the last year, and we're going to learn more. That's an open invite, as you mentioned earlier, for anybody that's interested around the world. Because, I do get a map of listeners, and there are listeners and viewers in other countries. And if you want to be a guest on here, come on. Yeah. If you don't speak English, neither do Shannon and I. So come on, we'll talk to you.
Business partner, he'll tell you I don't speak English.
One of my favorite things was I was in Nicaragua one time on a bus from Corinto to Leon, and I'm sitting there chatting with this nurse for 45 minutes, and one of the dentists that was with us says, "Do you speak Spanish?" I said, "No." And he said, "What have you been talking about the whole time?" I said, "I have no idea, but we've been having a good time." So, but I would say it's an open invite. If you want to be a guest on HIPcast, email me, Seth@thima.org, or reach out to me or Shannon on LinkedIn. We'll put you on the podcast. Let's have a conversation. That's all it is. It's a 30-minute conversation, right? It's very simple. And I think we need to continue the bonus content related to AHIMA and the profession. I think, I don't know what the future for AHIMA is with podcast or whatnot, but we have an established group of professionals that listen and engage with us. And, AHIMA should utilize this podcast for promoting the profession, in my opinion. And we're not asking for anything from them, but you've got 2 credentialed professionals talking to our membership and and highlighting our professionals. So, I think we should probably do more of that bonus content. I loved the engagement of the House Delegates, the summit, those type things. I think we need to do that. You and I've talked about, are there opportunities to do like live events or something? Like, how do we go on location?
I'm glad you got there, because I was going to say, at some of those state meetings where I have presented in this over the course of this year, I've been asked by at least 2, maybe 3, I can't remember for sure on my quick recall here, to come and do a podcast there, to be present, to have a booth, to sit there, a booth at no charge, but just to be where we can interview just a lot of different professionals that are there milling through. And I would like to see us get to that in 2025. I hope we can do that.
You got to figure out logistically how that works, right? How do you do it like an on the spot or on location podcast? This is controlled, right? And I don't do well with things that aren't under control.
What's your definition of control terms?
Yeah, that's fair.
They're not controlled.
That's very good. So, I mean, to me, that's the future, right? Let's continue highlighting the incredible people that are in our profession. Let's continue to figure out ways to engage what's occurring with our national profession to the general membership that we haven't had in the past. And then, it's just again a reminder to our audience that this whole podcast is in support of our profession. It's for scholarships and for advocacy. It's related to the THIMA Foundation. So I hope to grow sponsors in the future, and for those that are interested, reach out. That we would love to have additional sponsors, because all the finances go towards the foundation. Nothing comes to Shannan or I.
That's right. That's right. Well, Seth, I've enjoyed our conversation with just you and I today. This has been fun. We recently recorded the bylaws changes the House delegates will be voting on at the end of October. Now we're looking, is this December?
Yeah, December 30th.
December 30th podcast for today. So recently we recorded the October House delegates meeting review of the bylaws. And for us, my thoughts on that one, I want to mention how important I feel like that was. I know that as a member, before I got involved with volunteering, I didn't really know what all was going on. I didn't really understand the governance structure of AHIMA in the states. I didn't understand who voted for what. I know the general election, sure, but how we govern in the processes of change, I didn't know. So it was important to me that we did that House of Delegates review for the October session, because it helped people, I think, understand, just general membership, understand how things work, and hopefully inspired some volunteerism. So I will also say one of the reasons I feel like Seth and I wanted to do this podcast is because of volunteerism. We want to be, truly, as Seth said, we get nothing from this financially. We just really enjoy serving in our profession. And we feel like this is a service to highlight our profession and our professionals, right? Our colleagues across the country. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention before we close. 17 states, I believe, we covered this year. We had professionals on from 17 different states. That doesn't include our non-HIM professionals and Dr. T in Asia. That is health information professionals from 17 states. So in 2025, we are hoping to cover more states across the country that have not been highlighted on HIPcast. So if you don't know anybody from your state that's been on and you want to be on, definitely give us a call. But Seth, I want to wrap up today by saying, just like anything else I've done with you, this has not been without its challenges, but it's been worth it.
That's right. That is very true. Well, it has been fun, and I'm looking forward to 2025 with HIPcast. And all I can say is thank you to our audience that's followed us on LinkedIn and subscribed on all the platforms and listens to this madness and this crazy English that we have. And we're excited for another year. So Shannan, until next time, my friend.
See you next time, but next year, buddy.
Next year.
Next year.